Welcome back to another edition of the RTF Show. I'm your host, the guy on top of the league, the leader of the Staleys, Michael Rose, here with brother John. Brother John, bottom of the league. How's it going? How's it? How is it down there?
Okay, first of all, I'm not at the bottom of the league. There are at least three teams below me.
Oh,
And
okay.
two, moment of silence. Game time has officially ended in Portland. It is over. Passing
Yeah,
the torch to my good brethren and Johnson, Steve. May you enjoy, Dame. May he, uh, may he bring you another title. Much as that
let's not
pains me to
let's
say
not go
that, but
let's not go that far.
that's
Um,
fair. That's fair.
may
But
he bring some exciting basketball to watch, which I think he will. We'll see. I'm intrigued to see how that team kind of fits together. Uh, it'll be it'll be a fun watch, but you can check that out on our on the the tip off podcast for our fantasy basketball.
yeah, yeah, Rose
Uh,
Bros Boy Basketball
yeah.
Podcast.
Um, the story of the week in football. Well, there were several. Um, the Miami Dolphins. I'm repping my Miami Dolphins jerseys in honor of their 70-point shellacking of the Denver Broncos. Pretty impressive. Can't
Yeah,
wait to see them do the same thing to the Patriots next week. Um,
but it was
and
not record breaking. So
no,
let's
not
just
not
let's
record
just
breaking,
let's say that
but
it was not record
also
breaking.
also excited to see them to see Denver allow another 70 points this weekend. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. The
I don't think so.
there was some big news in the Bears organization last week as well. If you were following along, Alan Williams exits stage left under a cloud of smoke that nobody is still able to quite decipher what had happened. It does not seem once again, Reddit did not handle things well, throwing out all sorts of
Oh
allegations before before it was finally proven that he may really just have had some health issues that he needed to retire
I
around.
don't know.
Um,
Pat McAfee confirmed that the FBI raided his house. So, I mean, Pat
Interesting.
McAfee, I is close to the Williams family apparently. Um,
Interesting. Could this be related
confirmed
to
that, but
the could this be related to the 100 grand in equipment that was stolen from the Bears facility a couple days later?
no one
Who
knows. The
knows?
accidental cutting of Nathan Peterman and then the rehiring of
And then
Nathan
the
Peterman.
resigning of,
Uh,
thank God for
um,
Nathan Peterman.
yeah, I
Um,
don't know, but my favorite rumor that was like confirmed on Reddit was that FBI agent Peanut Tillman personally showed up to Hallis Hall to deliver the news
it's pretty great.
to Ryan Poles,
Um,
the Georgia
yeah,
and the company.
yeah. I have enjoyed the just knowing that Peanut, one of the greatest defensive players of all time in Bears history, inventor of the peanut punch, is out there, punching crime for the country, defending our rights as Americans, as a member of the FBI. Always good to know. Also, great to see him come to the aid of his former team in its time of need. Not sure that actually happened, but
Yeah. I don't
great
think
to
it
think it.
did, but that
No,
was
I don't
a
think it did either.
confirmed. That was confirmed on Reddit within like 2 hours of this whole thing
Yeah,
going on. It was Tina Tillman was
confirmed.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Um,
certainly was not. But I don't even think that was the biggest thing that happened in the last week.
what
Um,
was?
oh, we got three. I would say three fairly big things, and I'll leave it up to you to decide the the importance. And I'll run through them real quick first before you respond. One, your birthday.
Oh
Two,
yeah.
T Swift showing
Oh
up to the
yeah.
Bears game to watch the Bears play, of
I'm sure
course.
that's why she was
Uh,
there. Uh-huh.
and then the Kelly Jake trade.
We can go in order of importance, starting from the top. Taylor Swift is a football fan. Holy
My
shit.
God,
I know
I
we might
know.
just have to rebrand this. That's great. I'm glad the NFL is clamoring all over itself to get a piece of that Taylor Swift action. Uh, um, it- Quite fun.
I saw
Uh,
a video that she was snuck out of the Kelsey suite in like metal like popcorn like box contraption that like the popcorn machine was like originally brought in. That's the rumor I saw on Reddit.
yeah, okay. Um,
Because there's so many fans out in like the hallway
yeah,
area.
yeah, yeah, I get it. I get
Yeah.
it. My birthday, good birthday, turned 39 last week. Nothing too exciting. Took the day off early and went and played some golf. So that
Oh,
was
very
nice.
nice.
And then you know, came home. We went out to dinner. It was a good birthday. Um, nothing all that crazy though. With
So are
a
we going up or
9-month-old
down on the
down
importance
in
level?
down in
Oh,
importance.
okay. The most important was the Taylor
Yeah.
Swift. Okay, great, 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 great.
And
But yeah, I
then
would say, yeah. Sounds like a good birthday.
last, uh, Kelly
Hmm.
and Jake. Huge ripple through the league last week, and I'm just gonna throw the trade up there. We'll spend a couple minutes talking about this. Um, Kelly trading uh,
Mm-hmm.
Lamar Jackson and Amon-Ra St. Brown for basically $13. And Deshaun Watson and Zach Moss, who are players who are interesting. And as Kelly knows, who I showed some interest in this week, but are not needle movers in terms of future. I don't know how much Zach Moss went for in the auction. I can't imagine he went for much, and
I'm pretty
maybe.
sure he picked him up off the waiver wire the week
Oh well, there we
before.
go.
I don't even think he
So
drafted him.
so
So yeah.
maybe Zach Moss gets kept in some weird universe where Jonathan Taylor gets traded and Zach Moss continues to have a great season. Um, but I
Zach
don't think
Moss is like
Deshaun.
Alexander Madison, but worse, Like we've known who he is
Yeah,
for 4 years now. So
so we'll see. Regardless, essentially traded Lamar Jackson, Amon-Ra St. Brown for thirteen
hmm.
dollars. The reason I ranked it third in order of importance is because um, as much as Amon-Ra St. Brown and Lamar Jackson are great players and certainly will help Jake's team. Um, Having just kicked Jake's ass, I don't feel any threat in the division, and so not a real needle mover for the Staleys themselves. We're not worried about this trade from a
Excuse me.
division rival.
Well, that's big talk, and we can get into that game a little bit. Uh, I can certainly appreciate that. Yeah, I did confirm Jake picked up Zach Moss on September 13th. For Penn Fab. Uh, and yeah, for me, like it really, like you said, it comes down to $13 in draft money for Lamar Jackson, who at the time, had a terrible first game, an okay second game. Really, he was at his lowest value point there, right? Like not a lot of money. I don't know why you would trade him after a terrible start like that. Jake bought low though for sure. And then I'm on Ross St. Brown. Yeah, toe injury, I guess, but he was still practicing all week. And then he's on a minimum deal for this year and next year, right? So you're talking about $13 for a top 5 wide receiver and a perennial top 10 quarterback on a pretty cheap deal too. For Deshaun Watson will go for $10 at most next draft. There's just no
Yep.
way he's going to go for more than that. Zach Moss is irrelevant. And $25 in Fab does not do anything for Kelly this year or at all. She has enough Fab. It's really,
She
that's
might be
just
able to
maybe a
move
throw in.
it. She might be able to
Yeah,
move
you
it,
might be able to move it
but
for about maybe a couple draft dollars towards the end of the trade deadline. But Amon-Ra St. Brown having a toe injury at the time, not super serious, but also trading at your lowest value, which in the offseason, a few people, were sent offers for $20-25 or more for wide receivers in that same tier of,
yeah.
Waddle, CeeDee Lamb, uh, Ken purchased Kelsey and Diggs for 30 something dollars. Split it up, you're looking at, over $18 there, per. So yeah, it was a little odd. Certainly at the lowest value.
Yeah.
Jake pounced. Is another thing that's kind of weird to me. Yeah, Kelly started 0-2. She only had scored like 20 less points than Jake had scored over 2 games. So, really not that far behind. And then in 2020, in the first year of the league, she started 0-3. She actually started 1-4 through 5 games and made the playoffs that year. So, I don't think all hope was lost at that point. And so it was a little odd to see that trade come through. Now, good on Jake for making the offer and getting an acceptance. And to be fair, that's good on Jake. And he did kind of get hosed a little bit in the draft. So him getting a player like Amon-Ra St. Brown for that cheap for next year. It'd rather be him than giving it to someone like Peter or Ken
To Kramer,
or
sure. Yeah.
yeah. So I can't complain too much about that, but just odd overall. Anyway.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying about Kelly's team. I think Kelly saw the writing on the wall in terms of her team. She doesn't have a very good team, and she wasn't going to have a very good team even if she had Lamar Jackson and Amon-Ra St. Brown on her team. The problem going forward is, those were her 2 best players. Hawkinson has some value that she can certainly move. I'm
I
not
think he's under
sure.
contract too.
Yeah, I'm not sure who else. Maybe Sutton, maybe Cortland Sutton. But other than that, there's not really anybody movable on this team or anybody that's going to move the needle all that much. She could turn around and trade Deshaun Watson, certainly, possibly to the Staleys.
Yeah,
But
but even for that, now we're looking at okay, I'm on Robin for 12. If that's the value she's setting, then Jesus. I
well,
mean,
Amon
Deshaun
Ra
Watson's worth
and
4 and Lamar. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So we're talking about not really worth
probably
giving up more than 3 or 4 draft dollars
yeah,
for any other player on her team. Amon Ra is
yeah,
a top 5 guy. Lamar is a
yep,
top 10 guy at his position. The rest of her team is top 40, 30 guys.
yeah.
So yeah, I
So
mean
I
it's
think
tough,
it's
but
gonna be tough.
I also see a bit of writing on the wall for my team. Of
Oh
course,
yeah,
I got some guys that could pop. You just never know. Um, but you know, when the time comes, and I told this Steve when Steve reached out to me in the off season and said, "Hey, I'll give you, you know, X amount of dollars for CeeDee Lamb. I was like, well, that's not bad. It wasn't a bad offer. I also don't want to write the season off. Like he's
before it
literally my only
starts.
good player. I actually had big hopes that, Justin Fields was gonna pop and be amazing. Did not never thought it was gonna be this bad. But assuming it continues to go this bad, CeeDee Lamb is my guy. He's
Yeah, you
literally
gotta
my
wait.
only guy. You gotta wait. You just gotta wait. You gotta get the most value. And he presumably I would set the starting bid at $25. So it was just interesting to see such an early sell. Um,
Um, well,
but
good luck
we
getting
haven't seen such a
$25 for CeeDee Lamb. But
I will maybe
um,
guess they're high.
let's go back a little bit. So a lot of things have happened uh, in the uh, in the last couple of weeks. We are leading coming into week 4, and I'm just going to go to the standings here. So coming into week 4, we've got a 3-0 team at the top of every division. The
It's
Staley's,
perfect division or perfectly
yeah,
symmetrical league.
yeah, it's pretty wild. The Staley's are 3-0. The Black Stallions, Peter Sullivan's team, are 3-0. The Fupas are 3-0. And then we've got an 0-3 team at the bottom of every division. Ken 0-3, Porter 0-3, Kelly 0-3. And then there's a bunch of teams kind of making up the middle of the league right there. So
Hmm.
John, you're in there, but so is Peter Kramer at 2-1. Steve, a little bit of a rocky start, but now at 1-2. Uh, Jake, as I alluded to earlier, started 2-0, now at 2-1. And then Fitz at 2-1, Alec at 1-2. Um, real quick, I don't necessarily think we have to go back through folks's like we don't have to go back through too many individual matchups, but is there a game from over the last couple weeks, a game or two that you wanted to highlight?
Well, I did think that we had a couple good games. I think obviously we could, in week 3. I mean, in week 2 there was a couple good games, but still very low scores across the board, right? A couple blowouts, but generally low scores. Week 3, it felt like I don't know, maybe it was just the
Yeah,
NFL finally clicked, you know? Um, I think you're in week 2 right now, but
yeah,
in
you
week
were saying low
3,
scores. I was just looking at the 124 points.
oh my gosh, move on.
Sorry.
Uh,
What is it? Week 3?
week
You're looking at week 3?
3,
Low scores in week
we
3.
finally saw some high scores. I felt like just the NFL in general, the offenses
Yeah,
started to click,
I
and we
agree.
saw a regression towards the norm in a lot of the better players. Um,
Hmm.
and obviously we can go through some, a couple of these games, but I think it'd be remiss not to talk about what was a um a rematch of the inaugural season's championship in the Mecca Peter versus Portugal, the Ken, at the time Alpha Peter versus uh, Thoughts and Prayers, I believe was the
Hmm.
team name.
Yep.
Just an absolute battle that has been that way for a long time. I believe uh, Mr. Kramer let me know that he is 4-2 all time, including playoffs against Ken. So fairly competitive, but also just another you know stab in the side to Ken there.
And
He
really
just
came
can't really
down
get
to the
over the
fact
hump.
that
So.
Buffalo's defense had a fantastic day,
Oh, so
and
sweet.
gave Ken his third loss on the season. Had Buffalo, maybe not scored that TD, not had one of those interceptions, a couple less sacks, things would have looked different. But the game was decided pretty late in, Puka didn't do much in that Monday night game. And it wasn't, I think, until, the late half of the fourth quarter that he
It
caught
was
that ball with
I think a
like
minute
5 minutes
56
left.
left. No, I
Oh,
think it was a minute
is that what it was
56.
at? Yeah, that he
Yeah,
caught
let
that
me
ball
check the record here.
to put Peter over the top there. Um,
Yeah, sub 2 minutes.
which yeah, which pretty pretty, gut-wrenching way for it to go out for Ken. Although Ken, I'm sure, is pretty jet lagged, and was probably not watching that game. Um, at least I hope he wasn't. But uh, a great matchup. I agree. Great matchup. Um,
Yeah, and there's a couple really, really good guys. I mean, on both of their squads that you know even underperformed in this game. Including Jameer Gibbs, Calvin Ridley. Um, Puka Nacua is off to a hot start, but uh, God, you could even argue that Justin Tucker
well,
underperformed. He missed
I
he missed
think,
a 60-yarder
yeah,
short,
yeah.
so that was pretty interesting. But
I
I mean,
I
these
think
two teams are
they're
looking very good. So
they're
of course, had a
consistent.
couple
Yeah.
overperformed too, but
Well, I don't even think it's that. I think both of these teams had their studs kind of show up and have good days, and then it was, up to,
mhm.
um, it was going to be decided by kind of the marginal players, the guys like, Puka's had a great beginning of the year, but the guys like Puka or Jameer Gibbs, those first year players, or you know um, the Buffalo defense or Mike Williams. So
Who's now injured. It'll be
yes,
interesting to
now
see
out
who
for the
Ken
season.
pivots to. Yeah, I think he's out for the season now. So
So yeah,
anyway,
we can look at that. I'm not sure what you know, like Christian Kirk, I don't trust all that much.
hmm
Uh, Dotson, I don't trust. Who else does he have on his team? Christian Kirk, Dotson. He's got the rookie in Seattle. Uh, I don't
Brees
know.
Hall's struggling. Yeah, it's
Brees Hall,
interesting.
despite looking
Yeah,
great in that first game, has not looked great since. So
yeah.
I don't know what Ken does there. Ken probably looking to make a move to fill that flex spot with something a little bit better. Maybe Turd Ferguson. All right, let's move on. Is there one more matchup you want to highlight? Um, that was a good one.
I think yours and Jake's was pretty interesting. The 2-0 teams going at it, so that one's worth noting.
Yeah, came out. It really came down to Devontae just having a monster game
Hmm
on Monday, and it that was basically it. That's what kept me in it because
Yeah,
Josh
because
Kelly obviously
he
tried to sink the
had
ship.
again. I mean, not even startable at this point.
No,
But he had Joe Mixon and then
so
uh
he had
and then
Joe
Chris
Mixon and Chris
Godwin going
Godwin.
on yeah, both. I mean, Mixon finally did something at least.
Hmm.
But Chris Godwin, another sort of stinker of a game. Uh
Yeah, Godwin hasn't had a good start to the season.
and so I don't know if he's not getting the target that he typically got with Tom Brady there.
Hmm.
Uh and so you didn't see that, but yeah, I mean, Lamar Jackson showed up, looked great, 30 points
Yep.
there. Um,
The Sun God showed
uh,
up, played well, 17 points. I mean, I think this does give Jake a very competitive team, and I think it's going to keep him in the running uh, in the division. It'll be interesting to see what happens in Miami, with those running backs.
totally. Yeah.
Obviously, Sunday, you have to believe is an aberration. You're not going to see. I mean, I would say those guys will never score that many fantasy points again in the rest of their careers. Um,
Yeah, for
so
sure.
in one game, so it we'll see what happens there. Tua, though,
Yeah.
I think, is an interesting asset for Jake. Could try to flip him for a little bit more help in the running back room. I just don't know that Joe Mixon, who looked okay at times in that game on Monday night, but ultimately has clearly lost a step, I think, and is kind of on the backside of his career. Um, so maybe to get some extra help in the running back room, maybe to get a little bit extra help in the wide receivers, because beyond Amon Ra, I don't really know where he's going to go. Drake London doesn't really seem like a viable solution. Quinn Johnson maybe steps up now that Mike Williams is out, but I mean they
Hmm.
seem pretty content to throw to Josh Palmer. So I'm not
Yeah.
sure. And Nico Collins, seems to have been edged out by Tank
Yeah.
Dell. So
Tank Dell seems to
I'm
be the
not
guy.
sure that any of those receivers are
Hmm.
going to get it done for
Yeah.
him.
Yeah. And I think it did help. Like the trade certainly helps. How can it not, right? Uh,
Yeah.
but in general, so like we after week two, Jake was ninth in total points scored. And now Jake is seventh in total points scored.
Hmm.
Uh, you know, and seventh being, within a few points of being in fifth place, right? So like, it's pretty tight there. But as far as points scored in the top four guys, you're looking at, a 60 plus point difference right there. So like Jake definitely still, it has improved his team, but I don't know if, that's going to be scoring, uh, as enough points when it comes down to it. Even like right now, let's see, Ken has outscored him by 30 plus points or
Well,
so, or close
Ken's
to
team
30
is
points,
in a
or 20
so
points.
okay.
So
I think that's a good segue. So let's move out of these matchups and
mhm.
into a little bit different mode here. So we can run through real quick. Obviously, um, quick updates here. Survivor, Peter Kramer off the island for the first time ever, which
Ever
is
is
pretty shocking.
insane.
Goes out in week two, comes back with a vengeance in week three, but too little, too late. And then John off the island in week three, a familiar
Classic.
spot.
Yeah, yeah, that's about right. Yeah, yeah.
um, so
Glad I
Kramer
made it
goes,
so long.
yeah, Kramer goes from worst to first in that he then in week three won the weekly prize. The weekly high was the weekly prize for week three with 100
Yeah,
and almost 50 points. So sad, but congratulations to Peter Kramer on
short
his
lived.
failures and
Yeah,
achievements.
yeah. We were so happy for just a little while, and then Peter just shit kicked us all.
Um, and then some big injury news. So Chubb out for the season. That hadn't happened uh, since we last saw. What else we got in terms of injury?
Joe Burrow continuing to play through his calf injury looks god awful. Should his I think Chase came out and said he should take a week off. Should just definitely take some time. Um,
Yeah.
Saquon Barkley and Eckler both battling, I believe, ankle sprains, both fighting to return. I don't think either of them will play this week, especially Eckler, who has a bye in week five. I imagine they sit him again.
Mhm.
But I mean,
Yep.
for you, this is probably best case scenario in dealing with an injury. Obviously, best case being no injuries, but best case for an injury is you're 3-0. You've survived so far. Joshua Kelly's. I mean, is he playing? Is he playing football? Is he out on the field? The
He's certainly out on the
points
field. He's
are
just not doing very
astounding.
much.
Yeah, the lack of points are astounding. And then you're gonna, have to weather an early bye week, but at 3-0, that's not bad. And hopefully he's back week 6, and then off to the races. Especially with Mike Williams out, you've got to figure they're gonna lean on Eckler and
Yeah.
and have that workload be even greater at this point. So
Yep.
you got to be feeling pretty good about that.
Yeah, yeah, I that I do.
Yep.
That. Well, we can talk a little bit more about it in a second. But beyond injuries, we did have some big waiver wire pickups as well in the league. So Bill grabs Tank Dell, which I thought was a huge one, for $13. Excited about that. Also, some more questionable grabs um, that I'm not so sure about.
How did he spend more money on Baker Mayfield than Tank Dell?
Yeah, I'm not so sure.
He spent 15
But
on Mayfield and 13 on Dell.
but
But
Bill
good
is
pickup.
3-0. Bill's
Can't question it.
sorry. I mean, wait,
He is
Bill's
3 and
3-0?
0.
Yeah, Bill's 3-0.
Yeah.
Bill's 3-0.
Don't sound so
I,
shocked. Put some respect on his name.
and,
That's
yeah,
Tua.
for some reason I was got him crossed. Bill is 3-0. He's
That upper
got
pistol area.
he's had a hell of a start to the season. And maybe has found a little bit of magic to piece this together. Um, I don't know. He's put up, and it's not necessarily like I think he's got one of the bigger point differentials in the league in
Second.
terms of like, yeah. So in
Oh.
terms of how
No, he
many
has the
points,
second most points scored though. He's number 2
yes,
in total points
exactly.
scored.
That's
So
what I'm saying.
he's
So
pushing it.
yeah, it's not like he's not putting up points. So I think Bills may have figured out a little bit of magic here. Maybe he knows something we don't know
Do
about
you think
Zach Ertz
it's
and Baker
not
Mayfield.
do you think it's not spending so much money on defenses every week?
Maybe that's the secret sauce.
It's spending more money on offensive players.
That could be it. Maybe maybe the league's fucked now that Bill's figured that out.
He's not the defensive guru. Yeah. All
It,
other
it, it
news in that same week, Kelly spent $22 on Tony Jones.
Yep.
And I don't know how well he did this week. Not bad, 8 carries for 31 yards, 7 points, but you've got Kamara coming back this week, so
Yeah.
I think that's going to be a bit of
The
a
end of the road for
hit to
Tony
that.
Jones.
Yeah,
Um,
unfortunately. So
a small one, but Musgrave getting picked up by Josh. I think that is a good pickup. Maybe a stash for later on. Somebody he could potentially sign, given depending on how things go. And this week, what do we have so far this week?
So this week we had a couple pickups, nothing too major. Josh picks up Josh
Yeah,
Palmer,
Josh
that
Palmer.
is. Josh Porter picks up Josh Palmer.
Yeah,
$18, as that Mike Williams replacement. I'm interested to see how much they lean on Palmer versus getting Quentin Johnson going. It doesn't seem like Johnson has been very involved or just has definitely not had a breakout game yet. So we'll see about that. And then
from what I was reading, it does seem like they are maybe a little hesitant about Quentin Johnston. It
Did he have some drops in the preseason? I can't
I
remember.
don't
I feel like
recall,
he
but
don't. I don't. Yeah.
I mean, I do think they're higher on Palmer. So
Yeah.
I don't
I
know.
mean, probably knows the
Um,
offense a bit better for sure. But the one that I like the most this week, the pickup, Steve's pickup, CJ
yeah,
Stroud.
CJ Stroud. Yeah,
I
that's a good
I
pickup.
did. Yeah, I wasn't sure who I wanted to drop, if anyone on my team. Yeah, because my team is full of studs. Uh,
Hmm.
and I haven't given up on Justin Fields yet. So, um, but CJ Stroud is balling out.
He
Oh my
is. He
God.
is.
Yeah. Yeah. He looks incredible.
Um,
So good
yeah.
pickup.
Uh, it, one other note, the Kelly then dropped Tony Jones to pick up Latavius Murray um, almost immediately. So, all right, let's
That
move on.
is worth noting for sure.
Um, let's move on.
Kelko.
Okay, so it does look like this week we've got some pretty big matchups, and I'm going to pull it up here. Um, let's go to the matchups. Um, I'm going to start off at the top with mine. Uh, two 3-0 teams playing each other. The Staleys versus the Fupas. Bill and I will go head to head. Two teams with the two highest point totals in the league. Two teams both 3-0. A lot of it's going to come down to most likely if Austin Eckler decides to play this week. That could be a big, part of this matchup. But John, you are the unbiased observer here. What do you see?
Yeah. I mean, I think one, it could come down to a couple things. One, your quarterback decision. I love following this. We're gonna have to do a whole special segment on this. The the quarterback saga of the Staleys. Uh, you know, will he, won't he? Who's he gonna put in? Snip, snap. Last year it was Hurts, was it Prescott? And every week it was the wrong one. And then you
Well, I
shipped
got
off
news
Hurts.
for you.
But
This year, every week, it's been the right one.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think, you are correct. Daniel Jones shit the bed last week for sure.
Mhm.
But and Jared Goff looked all right. You got Jared Goff in there now, but I do think that, like, you like to play this dangerous game of,
Mhm.
picking up two quarterbacks and then
I don't
waffling.
like
So
to. I don't
I mean, you
like
could
to.
have kept Hurts. You could have kept Hurts.
We're not going to
And
relitigate the Hertz thing. The Hertz is the reason that, trading Hertz is the reason I have Eckler. I'm not sure what you're talking about. He's also trading Hertz is also the reason I have Devonte Adams. So I wouldn't have
mm,
either of those guys if I hadn't traded Hertz.
maybe, maybe.
No,
I
I'm
like,
pretty
yeah,
sure of it. I might have one of those guys. Maybe I'd have one of those guys. I wouldn't have both of them.
that's
Um,
fair. But regardless, I'm excited to see who you pick. Uh, and then, I do think Will Najee is going to come down to one, is Eckler playing? If not, is Joshua Kelly going to somehow fall into the end zone and get you 7 points, or 6 points,
mhm,
maybe? And
mhm.
then is Najee going to do anything? Which
Yeah.
I think is kind of the thing where it's Najee's been absolute god awful for three
Yep.
games straight,
But
and
Bills
Bill's been
withstood
able
it.
to produce. Yeah, and so,
Yep.
like, are they going to return to the norm? The first two games they had a tough schedule. The Steelers did.
Mhm.
San Francisco versus Cleveland, but Najee did not look good against the Raiders either. Um,
Yeah.
he looked okay.
Jalen Warren.
Yeah, he looked all right. He looked all right. He's more their
Yeah,
pass catching guy, so like I think he
he,
gets more
he-
work in that regard. But
sure, he looked
anyway,
okay.
we'll do a Jalen Warren tracker update in a few weeks to see where we're at on that decision.
I'm sure we
Um,
will.
but you know, Will Harris then come alive, and then how will Keenan Allen respond to Mike Williams injury, right? And so like how do defenses then shift on that? So will Keenan Allen have a you know even better game, or will he then be blanketed even more so? So I think there's a
Yeah,
good matchups to watch there. Andrews versus Ertz for you guys. I think that one will be fairly interesting. And
yeah.
then honestly, I think my favorite sort of matchup to watch here is your flex positions with Ayuk potentially coming back, hopefully coming back from his shoulder injury. Is that right? Was it AC
Yeah,
joint?
it does sound like he might come back this week, so we'll
Okay.
see.
And then Jerry Judy still dealing with some sort of um I thought he had a hamstring injury before, but this is saying a knee injury for him. So um yeah, hope that will be pretty interesting because I think both those guys have the ability to really go off and then
Yeah.
could decide this matchup. So pretty exciting though. I'm very interested to see sort of sort of battle of a White Sox South Side type classic here. Two guys with a
Yeah,
big old fat upper pistol areas battling it out.
I agree. I agree. I think Bill's got a good shot if Eckler does not play. And I would imagine Eckler does not end up playing, although he did return to practice today. So we'll see. Um, and is there another matchup you think is somewhat intriguing that we could highlight?
Oh, we'd be remiss not to talk about our boys at the very bottom of the standings. Someone has to get a W on the board. Uh, San Diego Web Surfers, former
Hmm.
champion of the RTFL, Portugal the Ken, back from vacation, feeling relaxed, ready to dig in here. Uh, Former championship contender. So really looking forward to seeing this one. Both have good teams, so I think someone's got to win.
So, I mean,
My
I
money's on
think,
Ken though for sure.
yeah, I think Ken clearly has the better team, and you know, I I don't see this one ending up all that close. Ken's Ken's just got a lot more star power going on, and Josh is relying on. He's going to need big games from guys who have not produced big games thus far this season in order to win. Um, and it could certainly happen, but I don't. Uh, I don't see it happening. And it's interesting because while the top of the league matchup, the 3-0 matchup between Bill and I featured the, you know, top scoring and second place point scorers on the season, this matchup, the 0-3 matchup, is quite a bit different. Josh has scored considerably less points than Ken has on the season, and Ken actually is ranking towards the top of the league in points scored on the season,
Yeah, he's up there.
despite being 0-3. So, I think it really is a tale of two different types of 0-3. One that is based around luck, or lack thereof in terms of Ken's case. Um, you know, Last week being a prime example, losing by 3 points
Oh
to
yeah.
a team that put up 149. So I like Ken's chances here. I think he gets his first W. The season is certainly not over for Ken. 3-0 is a tough hole to dig yourself out of, but I think it's still early enough that he can rattle off some wins here and get back in playoff shape.
Oh, fully. one thing I'd like to point out, if you exit out of this and then go down, just yeah, go down to like the standings, go to right by Ken's name. If you zoom in there, on the points against, uh, right next to there, they've added a nice little shit emoji, which
Is this
he has the
something the
highest.
league did,
Yeah, yeah, I'm pretty sure.
or I mean, Sleeper did? I went
Sleeper
too
did,
far.
yeah. Is it's the most points again. So yeah, they did that. That's
That's
hilarious to
hilarious.
me.
That's great.
Next to your total points for is a little
Crying,
laughing
crying
emoji
emoji.
because you have the most. Yeah. Another matchup that I was gonna point to. I mean, obviously 0-3, very fascinating. But there's two other matchups that I think that are actually very interesting to me. One being Black Stallions versus Fifth.
Hmm.
3-0 versus a 2-1 matchup.
Yep.
You're going outside your division this week, so everyone's playing outside the division this week. But I think this is one of those matchups that Fitz team I think is underrated in a lot of ways. And we haven't
Fitz's
seen
team,
the full form yet. And so I'm very excited to see what he does this week.
just as a reminder, Fitz's team was one that we ranked pretty highly in our, first
Hmm.
show of the season, and one that I think we both thought had some real potential. And part of that was reliant on Kamara coming back. And, he comes back this week. Um, so I think we could see some fireworks. I like what I've seen from Fitz's team. Um, Sullivan's team, on the other hand, I think still has those same questions that we had before the season, but has been able to sort of withstand a lot of the issues. Despite Matt, having Alexander Madison kind of fall apart. A
So
guy that I'm
early.
sure he was hoping was going to be a pretty rock solid dude. His starting lineup doesn't appear to be the case, but he's been able to withstand it through some big games. Obviously, from Tyreek Hill, uh, who's carried him in a lot of respects, but also from a decent game from Cooper last week. So
Yep.
I think you, we'll we'll see what
Purdy
happens here.
too. Yeah. Purdy's
Yeah,
been good.
Purdy's been great,
Um,
but
yeah.
I do think Fitz has the edge in this matchup.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I mean, I think Fitz team I really like a lot to pop. I think as far as New Orleans players goes, it's going to be interesting to see how Winston does, assuming he's the starter.
Hmm.
With Olave and Kamara there, you know, they weren't. Kamara was not super effective last year with Jameis Winston at the helm. Um, but you're looking at big play potential all over the board with on Fitz's team. So similar to Sullivan, how he had a couple guys pop that really carried him. I
Hmm.
could see that happening with Fitz too. And you got to think that the Steelers start to involve Fryermuth a little bit more too, and to see some of those, continue to see some of that uh, involvement there and get some points out of the tight end position. But I think both have some potential on the bench too. You got to think Damian Pierce eventually figures it out. Dalvin Cook playing. If Brees Hall is playing this badly, maybe Dalvin Cook he was able to step into some of that. And then of course Marquise Brown, Loki looks really good. So
Hmm.
Sullivan he could have a gem on the bench there. Marquise Brown has had 5 receptions or 5 targets, 10 targets, and 7 targets, 2 touchdowns the last 2 weeks. And not a ton of yardage, but some decent yardage. You got to think the more he plays with Dobbs, the better that relationship's going to get. And then, of course, if Kyler Murray does come back, Marquise Brown could be a substantial fantasy asset, in the second half of the season. He looked really good last year before he got injured. So I
What
think
was the year?
2022 he got
Yeah,
injured, but
2020 Marquise or Hollywood Brown had a good end to the season. I think the issue with um, with Hollywood is he's always been pretty touchdown reliant. And if he's not getting those touchdowns, he doesn't often get those like big yardage games where he's going to get over 100 yards. Like even just scrolling through this now, he had one 100-yard game last season. He had a couple the season before, I believe three the season before. Um,
yeah,
it's
2022
just,
he had a hot start and then got injured, and then I think
yeah,
Kyler Murray was out the whole second half of the season. So um,
in one in
was
2020.
playing with.
Yeah.
So like I think
So
he's had some trouble, both injuries and quarterback issues. But yeah, I think it's potential there, right? Like he could have
sure. Yeah,
uh a good breakout season, or a good second half of the season. But of
sure.
course, if he doesn't have to rely on him, then that's great too. So um, yeah, interesting matchup for sure. And then I was just gonna touch on Steve and Alex matchup, both 1 and 2, both had some
Mm-hmm.
a get right game. I think last week. I think
Mm-hmm.
Steve won last week. I'm not sure about Alec, but um, I think
Alec,
both those guys might be able to pull something out. Looks like last week Alec lost, but uh, so
Alec had a good showing against Fitz last week, but also ultimately had the loss. I think Alec again. It, you, you're not going to get 50 points again from Mostert or 40 points or whatever he put up last week.
yeah, for sure.
So as we knew before the season started, Alex's team is basically two players. It's Derrick Henry and Pat Mahomes. Uh, and it's going to rely on those guys putting up big numbers for him to, I think, to win this week
Which Derrick
again.
Henry hasn't put up big numbers at all yet
No,
this year.
no. So, and I think Steve obviously has a much more complete team across the board, and one that, as we talked about, uh, in the preseason, um, is or in that first week is, I think, kind of at the top of the league in many respects. So I do think Steve takes this down. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, I think it'll be good to see. I think it's something to keep an eye on. Obviously, Alex got a couple guys
yeah,
that can really pop, but I think Steve also has quite a good team. I'm very excited to see. I think we haven't even seen like a truly good Christian McCaffrey game yet, which is absolutely terrifying. That we haven't seen a truly dominant Christian McCaffrey game yet.
yeah. I
You
mean,
know, and you're
part
looking
of
at
it,
those numbers right there, and it's like 26, 23, 20, and it's like that's good, but that's not
yeah.
like Christian McCaffrey. Like,
Part of it,
yeah.
right, is that
So,
there's been a couple games where he has been pulled
hmm
um, at the
hmm
end, and I gotta imagine that's gonna be a theme throughout the season, where if San Francisco's up by two scores, they're gonna kind of not necessarily take the foot off the gas, but they don't have to leave Christian McCaffrey out there when they have all these other weapons that they can go to. When they have
yeah, for
Debo,
sure.
when they have
Yeah.
Ayuk, especially when you have somebody like Debo who can run the ball, and kind of provide that dynamic as well.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make
Fortunately, yeah.
sense for a guy with Christian McCaffrey's injury history to be pushed to that
Yeah.
limit. I
I don't
think
know. He is so
for
good. And they are playing a couple of very high caliber offenses, right? Throughout the season, right? Not this week against Arizona, but Dallas, Minnesota, Cincinnati, the last few years has been high caliber. I wouldn't say they are the year so far, but they could get right by week 8.
yeah.
Jacksonville potentially, Philadelphia, and then playoff time. You've got Baltimore that first week, which
But
should be pretty good.
that's kind
But
of my point, right? Is
yeah,
that like you're not gonna get I don't think you're gonna see McCaffrey. It's not even the garbage time stuff,
hmm
right? I think it's just if San Francisco's D is good enough that they can kind of hold a lead uh, once they get it. And two, if they get a 2-score lead in the second half, I think you are going to see a lot of Elijah Mitchell. You're going to see a lot of Deebo Samuel just because they don't want to have to run him right now when it's one
it's
early in the
early.
season,
Yeah,
and two, they have playoff, they have Super Bowl aspirations.
yeah,
Like this
for
is a
sure.
team that is planning to win a Super Bowl this year.
Yeah,
So
I also
um,
think that there's plenty of opportunity where there's going to be plenty of games where he scores 2 touchdowns, right?
I think
I mean,
that's a
he's only
given. Yeah, I think
yeah, he's only scored
that's definitely going to happen.
one in each game so far. So I think
Yep,
that's like, we haven't seen that multi-touchdown game from Christian
for
McCaffrey
sure,
yet.
for
And
sure,
and we certainly will at some point. So,
a hundred
Steve being
percent.
1 and 2, is more terrifying right now to me than comforting. Simply because
Yeah, I
I think
agree.
Steve's team, and he's in your division, and
I
I
agree.
think that there is
Yeah.
you know Jake's definitely put himself a little bit further into contention, but man, uh, you know, I think Steve there is also pretty terrifying. So
Well,
that's some
Steve,
matchup I'll be
yeah,
watching.
Steve
So
was my pick to win the division preseason. I might even keep that pick now. We'll see. All right. That's all we got time for today. That that's been that's a show.
week
Um,
4 is um Bourbon Street. So the team that scores the
get your
most
TDs
TDs,
out.
yeah, put him up. So Steve, call up Christian McCaffrey, let him know you need that multi TD game. Uh, you know, I'll let Justin Fields know that I'm going to need at least one. At
Yeah, somebody call
least one.
Joshua Kelly. All right.
Yeah. God damn it.
This has been another episode of the RTF Show. We will see you next week when the Staleys are 4-0.
Peanut punch.